Excellent. Okay, looks like we should be live here real soon. If not right now, I don't know. Yes, excellent. Looks like live. No, wait, what? Huh? Okay, live. Okay. 20 seconds in. Alrighty. Excellent. Okay, video's there. Cool. Okay, don't need to worry about that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Morning Shenanigans again. This time we have Circumnavigation edition. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Anyway, I'm playing this game. It is called 80 Days. Got it through Humble Bundle recently. I believe it was the Tiny Build bundle is what we got it through. And it is based on the book by... Oh, geez, I forgot again. It'll say it on here. But it's based on the novel Around the World in 80 Days. So I'm going to go in. It's a steampunk version, basically. So there's a little bit of a twist. There's some differences as far as following the novel, but in general, it follows the novel. So, London, 1872. I have entered into the service of a new gentleman. It would seem he is a gambling man. And I'm going to try to beat this in about the half hour that I've got allotted. I might go a little over if I'm close, though. So we'll see if I can beat this in about a half hour. The goal, obviously, is to get around the world in 80 days or less. So I've got a route that I wanted to try, and I'm going to see if that works. And if it doesn't, then, you know, it doesn't. 80 days. And the musical score is beautiful for this as well. I don't know how well you can hear it. Jules Verne, that's who wrote it. Okay. I'm going to turn the music up just a hair. There we go. Just let me know somehow if my music is too loud or not. Turn that down. I can barely hear anything. Click to begin. We are starting in London. Begin. The sun is setting. Okay. Now, one thing I did notice about this as well is that, you do get certain things to help you calculate your route. There's travel tables and stuff that I noticed. I played only a little bit of this. I've not beaten it yet. I actually restarted my progress. This was one of the ones I recorded recently, but I didn't like the way it turned out. It froze up and dropped about 25% of the frames, and I don't know if that hit any of the content that I wanted to actually save or not. So I decided to stream it instead. I've got other games that I can also record. There's another one I did record. It's an indie horror game that I need to edit down, I think. But I was able to play it and record it, so yay. Anyway, back into the game. Okay. Monsieur Phileas Fogg returned home early from the Reform Club in a newfangled steam carriage. Besides, I helped him down, and the iron-lunged, steam-driven horses clattered away. Passepartout, he said. We are going around the world. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Around the world, monsieur? I asked, utterly astonished. We shall circumnavigate the globe within 80 days. He was quite calm as he proposed this wild scheme. We leave for Paris on the 8:25 in an hour. Surely you are in jest. I am quite serious. Pack an altimeter and my evening jacket. There is not a moment to waste. You and Passepartout have funds, blah, blah, blah. Your character is now polished. I have no idea what that means. So we've got our route right there. We're going to London. We need to pack first. He wants this. He wants this. And I actually found this was most helpful because it gave me a lot of shipping routes and routes to get between cities. So not time to waste, so time to go. Our completed Englishman's wardrobe should help us negotiate times of upper class journey. So you can see I'm seeing all the shipping routes now, so I can see shorter routes and how to get places really quickly. Alright, so now we shall depart. Embark. Go! We are on the Amphitrite Express. And I do like the graphics for this and how it's set up. It's really nice as far as how this plays out. The mechanical horses raced past Piccadilly Circus and Pall Mall faster than a team of thoroughbreds. Even so, the whistle of the 825 was blowing as we pulled up to Charing Cross Station. "We have no tickets," I exclaimed. "That does not signify," Monsieur Fogg remarked over his shoulder as he hurried toward the platform. "We must not miss this train." I rushed after him when we leapt aboard. And just as another train whistle pierced the air, a guard raised his thick brows at us as we settled into a nearby compartment. He held out his hand. "Tickets, please." I pretended to have lost them, patting down one pocket and then the other, and was about to start digging through our suitcases when Monsieur Fogg interrupted my touching performance. "My valet is trying to express that we were in too much haste to purchase tickets," he said. No doubt intending to chase... No... Which was not at all my meaning, and left me rather in doubt of my master's interpretive abilities. He was not a particularly theatrical man, it must be said. "You may purchase them from me," the guard was saying, "though it is more expensive, I'm afraid. £85, please." I'm just going to hand over the £85. Okay. I handed over the £85 and smiled a thin smile from one working man to another. The guard gave me our tickets and slid the compartment door shut behind him with a pneumatic hiss. "Your funds have gone down somewhat." Okay, that's not a... "I am on fine form despite your efforts. Converse. Journey. But tell me, monsieur, what is the purpose of the journey? I have made a hefty wager and I do not intend to lose." This journey will be most expensive, monsieur. Indeed, we can earn a little from buying and selling our possessions as we travel." "Very good, sir. Very, very good." And down here is our relationship down in the lower right. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not. That's our relationship with Monsieur Fogg. So hopefully, London smog gave way to rolling hills and the pastures of the Kentish countryside, still untouched by the hand of technological advancement. Monsieur Fogg read his paper while I repacked our bags, thrown together in haste and confusion. As afternoon turned inexorably to evening, I discovered that my master was one of those gentlemen who broke their silence rarely, if at all. A guard rapped on our door. A few miles before Dover, we are about to submerge, he warned. Take some people a bit funny, so watch out." "What do you mean, submerge?" I cried. "This is the London to Paris Amphitrite Express," he explained as though to a particularly dim-witted child. "The submersible train? Talk of all the London papers?" "Then this is the Mer train?" I exclaimed. He made a face. "Bloody journalists and their silly names," he muttered. "Every inch of her has been examined and stamped with the artificer's seal. This is the world's only bath-escape locomotive." I pressed my face to the window glass as the fins above the Amphitrite's wheels extended with a hydraulic hiss. Night fell, and we plunged past the end of the track into the freezing water of the English Channel. "Your relationship with Fogg has improved slightly. Yay!" The Amphitrite plowed through the water overnight and splashed up onto wider gauge French tracks at Calais as dawn broke. "Do you have a route in mind, monsieur?" I asked as the water of the channel dried from the compartment windows. I am as yet undecided," my master admitted. "The new canal has sped up the shipping route from Suez to Bombay, though perhaps we could take the Trans-Siberian Railway across Russia." "Surely not Bombay," I exclaimed. "We shall certainly wilt in the scorching heat." "Then we would do well to buy hats and linen trousers," he replied. "There are other alternatives. We may also travel overland across the Black and Caspian Seas." "But which is fastest? I believe," he said, "that is what we shall put to the test." Parbleu, I scarcely knew what to think. We arrived at Gare du Nord, I have no idea, just after 1 o'clock. Automaton porters lifted our luggage and then our persons onto the platform with long, delicately filigreed iron arms. Paris, city of my heart. I was home, but not to stay. So we've got new routes from Suez to Bombay for the Suez Canal. And then we've got Moscow all the way across to the other side of Russia, basically, on the Trans-Siberian Railway. Which, if you've not heard of that, it is a real thing, and it's quite a feat of rail. We should go here. Okay. So that gets some stuff in there. What is this worth in Berlin? Because yes, this is going because it is worth a hefty amount in Berlin. That's right. Okay. That should do for now. Explore. I want to get to Berlin. We had a few hours to spare. I asked Monsieur Fogg if I might enjoy the city before we had to leave. Indeed, and you should you learn anything of note, be sure to relay it. I nodded and headed into town. The talk on the streets was of one thing only, an enormous, elegant oval stadium constructed upon the green fields of Champ de Mars and containing the technological marvels, art, amusement parks, and milling crowds of the World's Fair of 1872. My city still wore the scars of last year's siege. I ventured inside. But I was certain Monsieur Fogg did not intend for me to visit fairs. No, we're going inside because I bet you we're going to learn something of note here still. I don't remember if I did or not, but I think we might. I ventured inside the grand illuminated pavilions of the exposition. An artificer was replacing an arc light. I went west towards the airship hangar. An artificer was replacing an arc light which had burnt out. She first disconnected the strange machine powering the lights. It had a spinning iron wheel which was wound around a series of armature coils. What is that device, artificer? I merely watched politely, not wanting to disturb her work. Artificers were notoriously irritable breed. This is bleeding folly and waste, the artificer grumbled in a thick Yorkshire accent. These Graham machines are finicky beasts. Graham machines? I inquired. Well, it's a... Oh, never mind. She waved away my question away. It's a steam engine, all right. Only it doesn't make steam. Will that do? I hate explaining this stuff to laymen. I retreated hastily, not at all in terror of her irate tone. The harshness of her tone was belied by her gentle touch. As she unscrewed the arc light's globe of enameled glass and replaced the 2 carbon rods within, she reconnected the supply and the 10 Yablokov, I have no idea how to... Yablokov, I think, candles connected in series lit up once more. They are miraculous. Will all the streets be lit with electricity soon? I asked. There are already a fair parcel of cities lit by electricity rather than gaslight, she retorted. London will probably be last, given old Queen Vicky's prejudice against it, the Artificers' Guild. The Queen is against you? But Paris is modern, and we still use gaslight. Surely London is the capital of invention. Now, but Paris is modern, and we still use gaslight, I argued. The Artificer eyed me sadly. Frenchy, are you? She sighed. Paris is nice enough, I suppose. But it's no Istanbul. Now there's a bleeding city. She looked at her pocket watch, cursed, and hurried off, dropping something as she went. I hurried after her to return it, and she thanked me. My medallion. I'll need that to get my lunch from the canteen. Thank you. I bowed in return, and she giggled. Stop that. You'll make me blush. She rubbed the coin thoughtfully. I was given this for my work in Istanbul, you know. I made a very special automaton. I think it works as a driver now, on the route from Izmir, I think that's right. An automaton who can drive? Of course. Is that so strange? I could only shrug. Who knows what is normal in this modern world? I looked about once more. Avenues sprawled in every direction between the inviting, illuminated pavilions of the exposition. I headed toward the red and purple tents of the Artificers' Guild. I took a stroll down the Avenue of Nations. Let's go to the Avenue of Nations. I bet you I can get more routes that way and find some really nice, quick routes. I took a stroll down the Avenue of Nations, lined with buildings and the styles of nations of the world, and manned by foreign delegates in national dress, although the newly formed German Empire was a conspicuous absentee. In the city it had so recently conquered. The Austro-Hungarian delegation was being harangued by an artificer who looked to me like a farm boy from Provence. The artificer was pointing at one of the soldiers guarding the doorway and shouting in terrible German, "Verboten, verboten!" I peered at the soldier. "What's the matter here?" I asked the officer as he rounded on me. "These Austro-Hungarians," he raged in peasant accent in French. "How dare they? What do they dare?" The artificer pointed. "That!" The soldier by the stand moved suddenly with a mechanical judder, and I realized he was no man at all, but rather an automaton with an enamel-painted uniform and pewter face. The artificer cursed. "These Austro-Hungarians have brought their automata soldiers to Paris, even though war machines are expressly forbidden by the guild. Who knows what danger they might represent?" I turned away hurriedly. Crowds of tourists jostled and heaved past, their eyes wide with wonder. I headed toward the red and purple tents of the Officers' Guild. The Officers' Guild, draped with banners and emblazoned with their copper lily sigil. A steam-powered automaton orchestra played gleaming brass instruments. It had the most incredible display of machines, as though a scrapyard had been brought to life. One of the artificers was explaining the guild's credo to a group of sticky-fingered children, had his hands deep inside a human-shaped automaton. Rummaging through its clockwork innards, he took out a piece of engraved glass and peered at it with a jeweler's loupe. "Dash thing," he cursed in upper-class English tones, and then looked up. "Oh, hello. I didn't mean to interrupt," I said politely. "Nonsense, young man," he waved the glass shard dismissively. "I'm trying to build an automaton that can cook, you see. But it's not going well." He looked mournful. "This one can't even fry a chip." "How long have you been trying?" I asked. "It's been a dream of mine ever since I was a young lad at boarding school. That's why I became an artificer." The wistful tone dropped into horror. "The things old Mrs. Parsons could do to a cabbage, the tender stomachs of Britain's youth would be much safer in mechanical hands." Perhaps they should simply hire French cooks," I suggested with a little wink. "A French cook, eh?" The artificer stroked his mustache thoughtfully. "Good thought, old chap. Perhaps I'll go and find myself a cook to model my automaton upon." The artificer smiled. I wished him well in his culinary endeavors. He was, at least, in the right city to find a cook, and returned to the center of the exposition, ears ringing with the bombastic tunes of the steam orchestra. My feet were tiring, and the hour was growing late. I returned to Monsieur Fogg, who was eating a meal of plain boiled beef, à l'angers, I think is how that's pronounced. "Did you enjoy the exposition?" my master inquired diffidently. Gosh, I cannot read. I cannot read people at all. What? Hey. As though I had been visiting an aged great aunt rather than witnessing all the wonders of the modern world, all the wonders that world had to offer. "We are unspeakably lucky to live in such an age of invention," I declared. "It will certainly make it easier to win my wager," Monsieur Fogg replied mildly. "I dreamed that night of mechanical wonders and automatons with beautifully enameled faces, knowing little of the strange inventions and stranger peoples I would soon encounter in my journey around the world." The clock is ticking, Potspot. We must decide our next steps quickly. Quickly. Yay. Okay. Okay. We'll pass the night here, and then we leave tomorrow for Vienna. We took a hotel for the night. "We will be comfortable here," Monsieur Fogg remarked, "but traveling overnight will often be more efficient, so we must board the longest journeys available." "Perhaps," he replied, the short answer indicating, "I think that one-day journeys might often be more flexible in their timing and could allow for more connections. Still, the surrounds of the Hotel Ritz were most enjoyable." Depart. Okay, and it promises to be enjoyable, which is good. Boarding the Orient Express was an altogether calmer affair than our race through London had been. The mechanical porters loaded us in through the windows and then snapped them shut with a delicate click. The train was extremely fast and could sweep us across the whole of Europe, or at least as far as Deutsche Kaiserreich, where the track currently ceased. At last, long whistle. The words I cannot talk. A last long whistle blew, and we began our journey east. Let's converse. Greetings, monsieur. Can I help you at all, monsieur? I am the guard of this train. Vienna. Pray, tell me about Vienna. There are strange rumors about the Austro-Hungarian Empire's soldiers. Prague. Is it possible to get to go to Vienna? Go from Vienna to Prague? Seems unlikely to me. Now tell me, have you been to Bordeaux? No. Ah, a shame. I wanted to ask if it was a nice spot for a honeymoon. Okay. Zurich. Is it possible? Seems unlikely. Budapest. From Vienna to Budapest. Okay. My master wished to be undisturbed, so as we left Paris, I barred our compartment door. I left him and went to explore the train. There was a delightful dining car and an observation deck formed by the replacement of an entire compartment with an open glass tube. I stopped there watching the scenery flash past, and as I stood, a portly gentleman with a quivering, luxuriant mustache struggled by carrying several trunks. I am no porter, so I offered him my aid, and he introduced himself after a shower of thanks. Henri de Bluitz, foreign correspondent of The Times. I introduced myself in return. My name is Passaporta, and my master and I are going around the world. Then I wish you luck, he replied. He patted his breast pocket. The stories that you hear, it seems everywhere is on the brink of one revolution or another. Everywhere there is progress, but who will count the cost? That sounds most ominous. It will not be as bad. It will not be as bad as all that, I assured him. Oh, he replied with some dark amusement. Perhaps the people of Belgrade would not agree with you after what happened there. Good day to you. With that, he clapped me on the shoulder and headed off in the direction of the dining car. I followed him and found a few groups of people talking quietly. I sat with a young composer heading to Vienna for a concert by the great steam orchestra there, but he spoke little but melody, harmony, and the progression of chords. I had an interest in music, but not an understanding. And so most of his words were lost on me. More interesting, however, were his remarks upon the political situation there. My uncle warned me not to play an instrument myself while within the city walls. It is apparently forbidden. But why? He shook his head, then smiled with a quick smile. Perhaps they are tired of foreign musicians showing up their own great composers. He left a short while later, following a pair of chattering Parisian ladies to the observation deck to watch the stars come out. I returned to Monsieur Fogg, who, to my surprise, looked up from his paper at me. What did you learn? Nothing, I replied. He touted. Really, Passeporter? You must do better than that. You are my valet. You must discover the lay of the land. Yes, monsieur. I tried. I tried. Hey, but we're 4 days in. I think I was 8 days in, and I was just then getting to Munich. We arrived at Vienna in the early hours of the morning. The customs officials insisted on searching our bags, of all things, artificing tools. I asked de Blois, who was lingering on the platform, for an explanation. The interdiction, of course. He saw my look of bafflement and continued. Only imperial artificers may produce automata in Austro-Hungary. A strange state of affairs, but I was hardly an artificer. So it mattered little. The sun rose in the sky as we left the station, illuminating the wide tree-lined avenues of Vienna in pale, welcoming light. See if I can get us a, yes, we must explore because I need to learn some more stuff and nothing's open. Cool, I can get up to Warsaw. I had nearly forgot my experience at the Paris Exposition, but Vienna's streets reminded me full force. The Austro-Hungarian Empire's might is built upon its armies of mechanical men. They are a magnificent sight. Their pewter faces are homogeneously handsome. They are a magnificent sight, ranged in gleaming rows along the wide Parisian-style boulevards. Their enamel uniforms shine to a polish. As I watched, I was approached by a bookish fellow who hurried out from under the impressive eagle-arched portcullis of the Zoo House. I have no idea how to pronounce these. I am probably butchering this massively. The Imperial Armory. You think them fantastical, he demanded, a curious tone in his voice. Glorious, I replied, beautifully crafted. They are more impressive than you could imagine. He stuck out his hand. Herr Danzer, apprentice engineer in the Imperial Kriegsorchester. We went to a cafe to talk. And once he started, he would not stop. Have you noticed none of the mechanical soldiers carry weapons? He hissed. What do you make of that? What did you make of that? It is most unusual, I agreed. Inside each one is a Mozart Haydn device, perfectly tuned. Herr Danzer replied, the song of the soldiers sing is one of devastation. A battalion in harmony can punch through a steel wall. He drew a gilded flute from his scabbard and laid it upon the table, looking at it thoughtfully. You are a musician yourself, I asked. Not really, he replied, shaking his head, an inconsolable expression on his soft features. I am just a member of the Musiker Soldaten. I cannot reproduce his entire explanation, for it rather stretched my German, but it seems the mechanical armies of Austro-Hungary are controlled by music. Will you be staying in the city tonight, he asked. I hope not. We must travel as fast as possible. Why do you ask? I inquired. He glanced at me before replying. The army is preparing itself. Events are on the move here. If you stayed, you would see for yourself. Is it worth seeing? I persisted. You are traveling, he replied. The army is traveling into Belgrade. And what of you? Will you ever leave Vienna? I dream of it, he confessed. As a boy, I longed to join the Artificers' Guild, but for someone born in this country, it is impossible. The Kaiser and the Guild are sworn enemies. The Guild, I reminded him, were politically neutral. He shook his head. The Guild are forbidden within the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Our automata are not Guild-approved. They are our own. His mouth was a cold line. The Guild would not countenance building such monsters. Thanking him for the coffee, I strolled back along the avenues, watching the city pass by with new eyes. Under its gilded and manicured beauty lurked something sharper and more bloodthirsty. Vienna was at once the city of music and the city of war. Go to the market. Do we have anything that I might need? No. There's no tables here or anything, so we should depart. Excellent. Ah! One can travel in a private car to Budapest, but the journey is tiring one. The playing of music. Okay. I was wondering what was being said there. Okay. Go to the bank. We must visit the bank, Monsieur Fogg declared. You have additional funds? I am a gentleman. They would extend me credit if required, he replied. But do you suppose I put my entire fortune into a carpet bag under your supervision? I did not answer. I regarded the bank as we entered. It was a place of stone and shimmering marble floors with beautiful windows, fountains, and plants. You wish to withdraw funds, we were told? I warn you, it may take some time. Ooh, it will take too long, I informed the manager. We swept out of the bank. Thankfully, our situation is not desperate, my master declared. Onwards! We'll pass the night here, because we're not leaving until tomorrow for Warsaw. We found a room in the newly opened Hotel Imperial, in a suite built for Duke Philip of Württemberg's maidservant. The view along the Ringstrave, I think, was impressive. With Monsieur Fogg settled, I hurried out to catch the steam orchestra performance I had learnt of on the train. Once there, I found my composer friend and joined him for the performance, after which he detailed many aspects of the piece which had entirely escaped my notice. Once finished, I hurried back to Monsieur Fogg at the hotel, but on the way I encountered a terrifying sight. Lines and lines of soldiers marching along the Ringstrave. I was curious as to their purpose, so I followed them. They were headed for the station. These were stirrings of war. I made my way into the Imperial, closed the shutters, and pulled the covers up over my head. Parbleu, what a dreadful time to be a traveler. At least in a few days we would be out of Europe. Oops. They've deteriorated slightly, but nothing's gone down. It was not the Orient Express that took us northeast from Vienna towards Warsaw. That train traveled to exotic locations. We were destined for the gloomy cold of the north, into the paws of the bear of Russia. Aboard the train, we stayed to ourselves. I fell into conversation with a Russian gentleman, that'd be better, who, as he told me at great length, was making the long journey back to Vladivostok via Moscow in the Trans-Siberian Express. I asked him about the Trans-Siberian, and his ruddy face lit up. Now there is a train, he... Oh, hang on. No, there is a train, he enthused, warming to the subject. It is capable of lifting off and levitating at higher speeds. The Tsar keeps it slow on purpose, because he does not quite trust it. The train juddered. I asked him about Moscow, and he shrugged. A nice enough city to pass through, he said, but not one to stay in. Too easy to offend the Tsar and his loyalists there. He bid me farewell, and I returned to my compartment. Greetings, Monsieur Krastokin. Good evening, man of France. Okay. Now, what do you know about Warsaw? Here's something. Moscow can be reached from Warsaw by the Belarus Express. Moscow. What else about Moscow? Here's something. Some buyers will pay well for pocket altimeters from Moscow. I hear you can reach. My mother worked at a time aboard the freight train. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Gallant rider. Okay. I have no idea what's going on. The train itself was comfortable enough and fast. We arrived in Warsaw before nightfall. Let's see what's in the... might be useful. And that might be... That sounds like it'll be useful. I trouble you not to play that Demian accordion in my presence again. Oh my gosh. We must plan. Okay. Yikes. Okay. We'll pass the night here. Okay. Figure out what's going on. We walked the streets of Warsaw, feeling the air of a different continent all around. In less than 2 generations, the Tsars had made this little outpost all their own. But there were the signs of dissent on every corner. for on every building project in the city, there were glued pamphlets declaring the Russians to be dogs, fiends, and Philistines. We turned back. We walked further, however, and saw no disturbances. It seems all the revolutionary types have been placated by prosperity. In fact, our hostilier told us later that the pamphlets themselves are produced by machines buried by the rebels during the Troubles. No one has yet found them to switch them off. There. I think that's why I'm not losing any relationship with him, is because I've got like the I've got the stuff to keep him happy, and that is helping a lot more. Sorry about that. Our dog decided he wanted to start barking at our neighbors, I believe. Okay. We clambered aboard the train. Monsieur Fogg settled in a far corner like a dusty old uncle, and I pressed my nose against the glass, watching the bleak countryside roll past. Trains are such marvelous contraptions. I could have been an engine driver myself, I think, if I weren't so dreadfully clumsy. Strangely, perhaps, I had found my fingers and thumbsness quite a benefit working in the circus, my previous occupation. I think it lent me a certain comic timing. I think it kept me away from the more mechanical performances, where I would surely have wound up with a broken neck or a pierced lung. Okay. Good evening, mademoiselle. Good evening. Minsk to Moscow. One can travel this way to Moscow, I understand. You mentioned trains. I've been told Omsk is connected to Karimska by rail, but the fare is over £1,000. I'm told you can reach Omsk from Moscow. On the subject of trains, I've heard Merv can be reached from aboard the military train. Let me tell you that some buyers will pay well for accordions from Merv. Not going to Kabul. Tehran is Iran. Okay. Maybe I should have asked more, because I'm not learning a whole lot. Okay, after nightfall disembarked. I'm going to have to hit the market tomorrow and sell some stuff. Okay, we'll pass the night because I need to find some stuff. A very cold newspaperman offered me a sip of Turkish coffee at a tram stop in Minsk. My grandfather was French, he said blandly. Then we are compatriots. I toasted him with my ceramic tumbler. I do not think so, he spat onto the ground vehemently. I did not know him. He was one of Napoleon's soldiers. Minsk was occupied by the Grand Army during the invasion. He did not speak in a particularly accusative tone, but any words I tried to say in reply coagulated at the back of my throat. I managed to choke out. I am sorry, he turned to me and smiled with half his mouth. What are you sorry for? You did nothing, he gestured with his cup. You are traveling? We will cross Russia to Japan. He gave me a downturned smile. Vladivostok is closed, he said. You'll have more luck going through China unless you're military. Thanks for the advice, I replied coolly. He narrowed his eyes at me. Our tram wheezed into the stop, and the conductor opened the doors. The newspaperman boarded. Enjoy your coffee, he added, without looking in my direction. I decided to wait for the next tram, but my dreams that night were haunted by cavalry and cannon, and soldiers with smiles like sabers. Okay, we can have a half hour to wait for the market to open. I don't want to add too much time either because we're 7 days in. Market. And accordion. Keep that. That's needed. Yes, I have. Okay, so I need to go through China, it sounds like, because... So I can go as far as Irkutsk and then down to Beijing into Pyongyang in North Korea. I'm keeping him warm. That's the highlight of this. The train pulled out from Minsk station after nightfall. Monsieur Fogg had taken to tapping his watch every time we began a new journey, as though he was recording the time of departure through some fantastical spring-operated signal. Perhaps he was sending a message to whomever it was back in London. Persuaded him on this curious journey of ours. Relations have improved slightly. Yay! And they're staying the same, actually, because, you know... There was little time to do anything before total darkness enveloped the train. Let's get some news. What is your wish, Master? Passportao? Health. How are you feeling? I am roaring health despite your efforts. Okay, good. I prefer the Kremlin to St. Basil's onion domes. Did you discover anything in the paper about Saritzian? I knew a woman who was on holiday in Saritzian long before the freight train went missing. Okay. Morning came and we were still crossing the Russian countryside, the train moving on its slow and steady way. I spent the time eavesdropping, trying to find options for our next leg, discovering from a charming Muscovite artist that the governor at Omsk is a likable fellow who enjoys travelers' tales. Finally, we pulled into the stone edifice that was the Moscow station and disembarked. Yay! I learned something new. Hooray! Okay. I don't think we're going to need any of that. I can put this into this suitcase right here. Alright, plan. Holy crap. Okay, so now that the part's tomorrow, we're going to go there. Pass the night here. Yikes, sorry. Okay. Moscow was not a comfortable city for a Frenchman. A local composer had just written a piece people were calling the 1812 Overture, commemorating the Russian victory over Napoleon's invading Grand Army in that fateful year. Patriotic passions were at fever pitch, but I did not let that stop me from exploring the city, though I resolved to affect an English accent in the style of Monsieur Fogg should I encounter anyone. I'm not ashamed to admit that I had been practicing that very skill for some time, though it must be said, not in the vicinity of my master. I traversed the city on foot, keeping out of sight of the patrols of uniformed policemen and Cossack troops mounted on black mechanical steeds. I ventured away from the wide boulevards and the eclectic archway of Vertskaya Street toward the outdoor markets of Staraya Square. They were full of apple-cheeked young boys and wrapped-up peasant women. Excuse me. I found myself drawn to one particular stall, which seemed plain on the surface, but had a variety of special merchandise for a discerning customer, including a magnificent bottle of Chateau de Yquem for 1860. I purchased it for £50, expensive, but sure to be worth the price for such a rich Bordeaux. As the bells of the nearby church chimed the hour, I returned to our hotel, content with my brief view of the Tsar's capital city. Depart. I'm keeping him comfortable, which is what matters, and we're on a freight train because we have to go through China, and I'm going to see if I can find some stuff there to get me more shipping tables. We took a freight train towards Sartien. Though the line was nominally a spur of the majestic Trans-Siberian, the track was of much older construction and hardly luxurious, let us say. It was quite an imposition for Monsieur Fogg, a fact which I attempted to temper. Crap. What? With solicitousness and care on our journey, though there was little that could be done to shield Monsieur Fogg from the rickety, swaying carriage and whistling draught. It went down 5, but yet it still, Thank you, my good man. I feel better now. By the end of the day, Monsieur Fogg was feeling almost sorry for himself. I could take Mr. Fogg's was feeling, or perhaps slightly motion sick from his incessant study of the newspaper. I've got him back up. That's the good thing. Converse. I need to learn more. Greetings, Monsieur Ivanov. I am the quartermaster here. You are most strange luggage. What can you tell me of Astrakhan? Astrakhan is right on the edge of the Caspian Sea. Okay, is it possible to get to Mount Everest? Sounds unlikely. Maybe, but you can obtain hand-woven rugs in Kabul that will sell for a fortune in Chittagong. Okay. Hey, I learned something. See what happens. See if I learned some new stuff. From Sartsain to Astrakhan on the border of the Caspian Sea was a short distance, but the train managed to make a great deal of work out of it, huffing its way along the banks of the Volga. I found a train guard to ask about our decision. I asked the bartender about journeys from... This is going to be more beneficial. I asked the bartender about journeys from Astrakhan, and he shrugged. The hydrofoil to Tehran is good fun, he declared. Though it's a crossing that's so rough, you'd better be prepared. We arrived in the mid-afternoon and went to explore this new town. Well, let's complete our Englishman's wardrobe. Oh! Yes. How much are these? 21 pound. There. There. This should get us some more route options. And I can't believe how far I am in 10 days. Let's see if I can actually do this. I think I can. I think I might be able to get... wow, I'm actually well past 45 minutes. But, oh well. I think I'm getting close. I think I'm getting very close, which is going to be most beneficial once we get to the Pacific. Trying to figure out how to hop around the island to the Pacific. Okay. Yeah, it might be. Ooh. Oh gosh. I think I done goofed. Well, we're gonna have to take the hydrofoil to Tehran. Crap. I've made some bad trades. The city of Astrakhan sits on the tiptoe of the Russian Bear, where the Volga River empties into the Caspian Sea. I found the people to be most friendly, and I asked their advice on how to continue on from the city. A passing nervous British seamstress suggested the boat to Tehran, and went on to remark that the devout sisters of Didicus are best avoided in Madras. And what should I do with my time in Astrakhan? The response was me, you must bathe in river mud. My new friend showed me to a small hut by the river where vats of fresh mud were available for soaking in. I could not resist the opportunity to lower myself into the vat of mud. I undressed behind a wicker screen and clambered in. The effect, dear friends, was most refreshing. I decided to try to persuade... to indulge and threw all my clothes back in mud-splattered haste. Mud! I do not think that will be necessary. Thank you, Passepartout, he declared firmly. Alas, there was no moving him. Let's just depart. Go. I done goofed by making for Tehran. Oh well. The hydrofoil across the Caspian Sea was a small affair run by one Alexander Sedlov, a keener and more enthusiastic amateur sailor than I had ever encountered. This is your ship? I asked as we boarded and stowed the luggage away. He patted the side rail of the craft, which wobbled. An ex-military vessel my cousin acquired, he replied proudly. I used to be a clerk, but the lure of the waves took me by the throat and never let go. He demonstrated with one hand around my neck. Now this is all I do. Never set foot on dry land. Sea legs are my only legs. I looked at his eyes as he spoke and saw even then the flicker of madness. Then he threw the switch on the engine and we were hurled across the water, literally hurled as though standing aboard a spinning discus as it leaves the athlete's hand. One can also travel its way to Baku, I understand. You mentioned boats. I've been told one can sail from San Pedro to San Francisco. Ooh! San Francisco? Do tell me more. What about this? You can buy revolvers in San Francisco, extremely valuable in New Orleans. What else do you know about New Orleans? Can I just say you can obtain trombones in New Orleans that will sell for a fortune in New York? See if anything else comes up. The hydrofoil's wild motion did not slow. I put my trust in Monsieur Sedlov as best I could, following Monsieur Fogg's placid example, and we waited out a most grueling day. It's the suspension, Sedlov admitted finally. I think it's a little loose. Ouch. It's a 10 to Monsieur Fogg. A shaped mustache. Excellent. Yay. Crap. By the second day, this broken suspension was all I could think about. None of us had enjoyed any sleep, and while Alexander kept his spirits alive with vodka-laced coffee, myself and Monsieur Fogg were at our wits' end. I tried to sleep, but obviously could not. After several hours, we came within sight of Baku, and we raised a ragged cheer, as though we had survived a shipwreck. We put into land to rest out the night. I'm at your service. Passepartout. There you are. Press your shirts. Okay. Yay! Very good. I've been very cautious. Excellent. Crap! Hold on tight, Tehran. The Prime Minister is a good influence on the young Shah. We already passed Baku. Baghdad's back the other way. I don't want to go to Baghdad. That's back the other way. There we go. Now I've got a way forward. After 6 hours of torture aboard the dread hydrofoil, there followed 5 hours more, by the end of which I think there were parts of my body that had seen no blood flow all day. Finally, Captain Sevlov sighted land. "Tehran," he declared. "Do not worry, my friends. You will find it a most comfortable place to be." "I am glad to hear it," I answered. Sedlov nodded. I am not convinced he really understood English at all. I fancy he spoke it like a parrot. We disembarked and he held out his hand for a tip. Yay, okay. Damn his eyes, but I gave him 10 pounds and then we were away. Honor satisfied, we staggered away into town. Relations with Fogg have improved slightly. Good. Crap. Can we at least plan? Pass the night here. I think I might have some stuff to sell. Oof. Tehran was a city of invention and artifice wrapped around an ancient grandeur. By-indoor airships floated between the minarets and mosques and church spires glowing golden in the gaslight. I longed to hear a rubaiyat in the manner of Edward Fitzgerald. I sought out engineers and found them in the cafes, drinking heavily sweetened coffee and racing their inventions across tabletops. I spoke to the metal forgers, an older woman whose muscular arms bulged under her chador, I think. Gosh, so many large words. I can't English. Leaned closer. The other artificers call us mere blacksmiths, she said, waving her burn-spotted hands. But could they make their wondrous devices if we didn't first hammer out their copper sheets and spin their wires? It is fine work, I remarked. The finest, a middle-aged fellow by the name of Rafik remarked. In other cultures, a copper lily may be enough for an artificer to complete their education. But we all apprentice to other guilds and craftsmen. To truly make automata, we must be jewelers, architects, shipwrights, cobblers, doctors, dancers. I met an officer who wanted to be a chef. Just so, Rafik smiled. Though we have had those here in Persia for many years now, of course. You have not shared that secret. He shrugged. We'll make civilized men out of you Europeans yet. Rafik flashed me a grin, taking the sting out of his words, and we clinked our coffee glasses together. Someone further in called out, "To the Shah and Shah. I think that's it. And we all raised our cups, and some wag added, "May he live forever under the watchful eye of the Prime Minister." Everyone laughed, and everyone laughed. That is my abiding memory of Tehran, a room full of men and women in the hazy light, a place where people could be both right and humane, all at the same time, a rare thing in this world of ours. It is a city, I am sure, that will stand forever. I think I should explore. Yay, new routes. To say that the capital of the Persian Empire is modern would be to deny the unparalleled glory of its ancient monuments and palaces. The Qajar Shahs ruled over an empire almost constantly at war, but the recent alliance with the Ottoman sublime Porte had allowed the city to prosper despite border disputes with Russia and British India. The city is itself peaceful and untouched by the skirmishes and politics of the empire's borders. I perused its avenues and gazed upon yellow-lit palaces and felt a great sense of calm descend upon me. Well, hang on. That's worth 6,200 in Benares. Where is... Wow, there's so many cities around here. Kabul. Hey. Oh, okay. Oh, geez. Tehran. See if I can... We'll pass the night here, okay. Yay! With the remaining days, I went out to explore a little, but found nothing of any great interest. Well then, that is disappointing. Depart. A black metal horse reared from the prow of the CabbageFiles, a masterpiece of Ottoman style powered by a new type of Persian engine. It ran from Istanbul through the Persian Empire and all the way to the British frontier city of Kabul. I was sorry to be leaving Tehran, a place of true possibility. Still, the CabbageFiles left us in no doubt that we were leaving. Its engines fired and we rocketed away along the rails. I could not wish for a superior valet. One of the Armenian porters nudged his Pashtun friend and muttered something uncomplimentary as he watched me struggle to load our things into the luggage car. I focused upon my task, but they continued to stare at me in discourteous fashion. "You look very strange for a servant," said the Armenian fellow, whose name turned out to be Abajan. I'm probably butchering these. I looked the man level in the eye. "Well, I am a strange sort of servant," I admitted, thinking on the unconventional services I had performed for my master since we had departed London. They only laughed pityingly in response. Monsieur Abajan tucked a purple lamb's wool pashima around my neck. "Perhaps this will help," he said rather hopelessly. I stroked the soft fabric as I returned to my compartment. Monsieur Fogg made no comment, distracted by the whistles and shouts which marked our departure from Tehran. "Ah! Let us attend to Monsieur Fogg." I woke to the gentle rumble of the train and dressed quickly, deciding to wind my scarf around my neck in dashing style. Monsieur Aubergine was entirely correct in his sartorial assessment. The colors suited my complexion very well. Monsieur Fogg took one look at me and raised an eyebrow. Very vibrant, he remarked. It was a gift, I said with a smile. You do, he said dryly, have a great facility for making friends. Did I catch a wistfulness in his tone? I do believe my master complimented me. I could scarcely credit it. I think it was a gift of pity rather than friendship, I replied honestly. Was his only reply before he turned away and fixed his attention upon the passing scenery until the Camouflage pulled into Herat, on the border of the Persian Empire and the frontier of British Indian colonial lands. The only thing we can do is wait. Okay. Austro-Hungary accused of World's Fair saber rattling. Ooh. See what happens, because I'm 17 days in. I'm probably about halfway, if not more. We had our papers inspected by Persian customs officer with a pair of magnificent extending spectacles, made of polished brass, and engraved with the Farsi script along the arms. He inspected our documents while turning a small lever behind his ear. A pair of smoked glass lenses slipped over the clear ones, and he inspected our documents once more. You are widely traveled, he remarked. We are traveling the world, I blurted out, and could nearly hear my master refrain from rolling his eyes. Oh, well, it is none of my business, the official remarked philosophically. Your papers are in order. Good luck with your travels. We repeated much the same experience with the British customs official a few hours later. And so we arrived at Kabul, thoroughly inspected and officially stamped. Excellent. Try to condense everything down into as few suitcases as possible. I don't know where Chittagong is right now. We can't do anything else but explore. I can't plan yet, so. New routes discovered. Okay. Good. As we explored the city, we were rather unceremoniously seized by a score of British infantry and marched along the walls of Kabul, up the mountain ridge, and to the fortress of Bala Hissar. Monsieur Fogg protested our treatment, and I joined my voice to his. No, I stayed silent. And I stayed silent, as befits a gentleman's valet. We were presented to a small, bespectacled gentleman in a palatial office, which looked rather more like a court, despite the piles of books and surveyor's equipment littering the floor. He gave us a glance over his spectacle rims. I am Mr. Smith, second assistant political officer to the British mission here. I do not have the pleasure of your acquaintance. I glanced at my master, who straightened his cuffs, but otherwise looked as though he might have been out for a mid-morning stroll and had wandered by merest happenstance into an Afghan palace fort. I am Mr. Phileas Fogg, and this is my valet Passepartout. I am a subject of Her Majesty, and passing through Kabul with no small urgency. Urgency? The political officer's eyes flashed behind his lenses. Pray expand a little upon the nature of this urgency, Mr. Fogg. He had the measure of my cool-eyed master. That much was certain. Monsieur Fogg was not used to being on the other side of the interrogation table, and I felt rather protective of him as Monsieur Fogg explained his wager and our resultant breakneck trip around the world. I could see Smith growing more astonished with each word. Finally, he took his glasses off and tapped them on the table. Were you Russian or Persian spies? He said musingly. You would have a more plausible story. You go too far, sir, I broke in, abandoning my common sense. My master is the most honorable man you will have the good fortune to meet. Monsieur Smith's eyebrows raised in an eerie mirroring of my master's expression, and then he cleared his throat. A friend of mine is traveling to Omsk. I consider it a great favor if you accompanied her. Omsk is quite far, I hedged. Yes, but at Omsk you can reach the Trans-Siberian Express all the way to Yusuriak or change at Karimska for Beijing. He explained, think on it. Oh, cool. He dismissed us and returned to his papers without a second glance. Quite a commanding fellow for a mere second assistant political officer. Do, 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 do. Oh, that would only take a day? But that... I think we should take the course of what we got here, because it would only be 100 pounds to go to Agra, which would get us there in 2 days, whereas we could get to Omsk in a day, but that would cost us almost twice more. May as well go this way. It's going to suck, but we'll do it. We'll do it. We'll accompany her to Omsk above the mail ship. We met the friend of Monsieur Smith, Her Majesty's second assistant political officer in Kabul, at the airship dock. She was wearing a daring red dress cut in the Italian style, draped over with a mink coat lined in satin. I greeted her with a bow, and she swept her eyes over Monsieur Fogg and myself before inclining her head. "Where did Mr. Smith dig you two up?" she asked rhetorically in the plumy tones of an English aristocrat. "Never mind, I am Lady Sybil." With that, she swept away, leaving me to manage both our bags and her own assortment of traveling cases. We barely had time to settle into our cabin before the little Schutelands airship jolted into the air, further evidence of the German Empire's heavy investment in Afghanistan's infrastructure. Much appreciated, most comfortable, good. The first day's travel was quite enough, drifting idly across mountaintops. I watched the scenery floating past deep valleys and impossible slopes punctuated by even more impossible villages and the occasional remote monastery. People, it appeared, were capable of getting anywhere, even onto a boat that sailed through the clouds. Night fell and stars lit up the sky. Lady Sybil joined me in looking at them, pointing up at one. "The dolphin," she remarked. "It's the only constellation I know." "Surely you know the Great Bear," I replied, tracing its form with a finger. She shook head. "No, I don't," she replied. "But I am sure I will get to know the bear intimately soon enough." With that cryptic remark, she left me. Oh, geez, I bet we just put a spy. We're sending a spy. Converse. "Greetings, my lady. Passepartout, well, yes. And San Pedro Road. Okay. Salt Lake City is a Mormon colony where polygamy is the norm. Yeah, we know this. Albuquerque. Is it possible? Oh, absolutely, my friend. Take the Transcontinental Express from Salt Lake City to Omaha. Yay! And that ends in Burlington, which is good. We were boarded by a half-dozen Imperial Russian and customs inspectors a few hundred miles into their airspace. Lady Sybil came to me as they checked the pilot's papers. "Someone tipped them off. They were watching for me." She searched my face. "Tell them I have traveled with you from London." "Of course," I answered. "Gallant, foolish, I cannot be sure." She smiled thinly as a knock sounded on the door. "I can see you are a good man." I bowed, and she giggled. Another knock sounded on the door, much brisker this time. I opened it without delay. Lady Sybil shot me a last pleading look before the customs inspector brought in Monsieur Fogg and began their interrogation through a translator. Finally, the question came, "Do you know this woman?" I stepped forward before Monsieur Fogg could open his mouth and said, "She is our companion," I said boldly. "We are traveling together from London in pursuit of my master's wager." The officials gave Lady Sybil a bit of a leer, drawing their own sordid conclusions about her position in our company. I took out my wallet, and at that they took a decision as to my character, and hence the ladies gave up the matter up. They completed their search of the cabin and of the hold and cabins, and disembarked by nightfall. We had lost a day, but nothing serious. That's not too bad. Yesterday's events loosened both Lady Sybil's tongue and her thickly painted facade. "I'm not really a titled lady," she confessed over lunch in an altogether more common accent. "Grew up in Whitechapel, I did." "Why Lady Sybil, then?" "James, that is, Smith, invented her." Her eyes lit at the mention of his name, and I saw how things lay between them, from her side at least. "How did you meet him?" She took a deep breath. "My dad was a coachmaker till the Artificers' Guild put him out of business. I took to pickpocketing from Mom and Da, and one day I picked the wrong pocket." She reached for another leg of chicken and devoured it artlessly. "James's, that is, Smith's pocket. He recruited me instead of turning me in. A thief and a spy. I was not sure if I admired or scorned her. You are a woman of many talents. I'm going to be a countess now. That's my mission." Lady Sybil laughed at my expression. "One of the Tsar's close confidants is looking for a wife, and James has found him Lady Sybil." "You'd marry for your mission?" "It's my duty," she said without inflection. "I would be an asset of enormous value to the crown. To James." Something in my face must have given me away, for Lady Sybil's expression softened. "Oh, Passepartout, you're not a knob. I didn't peg you for a romantic." "I am a Frenchman," I said automatically, though my voice lacked proper archness. "We are born romantics." I could think of nothing else to do but wish her luck. She took her leave as we tethered the ship at Omsk, with the suggestion that we might stop by the governor's house and tell him of our adventures. I imagine her sometimes as a pickpocket countess. I suppose she is in one piece still. She was a good liar, after all, and I do not like to think her condemned to a Tsarist jail. This is definitely worth it. Yeah, because I'm gonna make for Pyongyang if I can by way of Beijing. This is going to be needed. I don't think we need this anymore. I'm gonna move this over to here and move that down there. We should plan. Good gravy. Oof. Alright, passing the night here. I know. There was only one hotel on a large square across from a fine-looking residence. We found our room and warmed up. We strode over to the residence and knocked on the door. Okay, good. That's bringing him back up. And warmed up in front of a roaring log fire built disconcertingly from the same cut logs as the walls, floor, and furniture of the room and the building itself. We have to explore. That's all we can do. Oh, man. Omsk was the most important stop on the line between Moscow and the Siberian capital of Irkutsk, a fact we were made aware of by signboard in 5 languages that told us as much just outside the station building. The town was presumably of religious importance, since the palace was stuffed full of Orthodox churches, the way a sixth-class car is stuffed with pickpockets. Yeah, we need to sell something here. That should help us right now. Hopefully that will keep us just fine, because we gotta pay $1,200 to get to our next stop, and then hopefully we'll have enough to get to Pyongyang, so I can sell that very valuable Western Star. As night fell, I afforded my master every service. No, as night fell, I went out to explore a little and spoke to a somewhat energetic Muscovite soldier who had lost a monocle, which I helped to recover, and from whom I discovered that there is neither a bank nor market in Irkutsk. I assured him we were unlikely to head that way, to which he nodded. I never wanted to leave my mom, but yet I am here. We've already reached 22 days in, but actually not too bad. Before retiring, let's explore level. Who had mislaid a locket, which I spotted, and who then, between bouts of great political passion, told me that the only bank in Ussurisk has gone bankrupt. I thanked him, and he laughed and went about his business. Depart. Oh my gosh! We're down to $85. Holy crap. We boarded the Trans-Siberian Express at Omsk Station and settled into our seats. I hope I can make it Pyongyang. Yes. Greetings, Monsieur. Karimskaya. There's an outpost of the Artificers Guild. Pyongyang. You can reach Pyongyang. You've mentioned train. New Orleans is linked to Washington aboard the Piedmont Airline. Pyongyang, Yokohama. Absolutely. Okay. By Korean trader, the fare is well beyond most travelers. Ooh. Yokohama to Honolulu. You'd have to have a separate, but you can pick up harmonicas in Honolulu. Extremely valuable in New Orleans. So many different routes. Yeesh. So many different routes. Hang on just a second. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, our puppy needed to go outside. The lines are thick here, and other trains pass ours frequently. Some are filled with settlers and others with soldiers, packed into fifth and sixth class cars so closely that I wonder if they can even breathe. I saw a darker train go past, metal cars with iron gratings that seemed to cast shadows as it moved. It was a prison train, bound for nowhere. The criminals aboard were simply carried backwards and forwards across the mountains, always moving, never stopping. I saw children's faces held up to the light. The prisoners are allowed to take their families with them. Whether that is mercy or a worse punishment for a good conscience, I cannot tell. See if I can learn some more here. May I see your ticket? How I despise this job. Kadamsia Pyongyang. On the subject of trains, I've heard Calgary is that's okay. You're not very... You're not very helpful. You really suck at your job. Let's converse, try to learn some more, see if I can find some cheaper routes here. Nothing. Oof. Oof. I'm so hurt. We crossed the halfway mark of our journey today. In the morning, we wound up in the Angara Valley towards the mining camp of Irkutsk, the great city of Siberia, where some passengers were leaving to join routes south into Mongolia. We waited while the luggage was on it. Why anyone traveled in that direction? No, we may as well just... We waited while the luggage was unloaded by leisurely porters and rough-clad mujiks until the whistle blew and the train's engines wound up once more. Our journey continued. There's nothing more we can do. I didn't discover any routes off of there. Our journey continued, and by afternoon we had reached the magnificent expanse of Lake Baikal, as clear as the finest crystal, bounded by the flower-banked cliffs on the western shore and containing a thriving raucous population of freshwater seals. The track ended at the lake's edge, but the great train showed no signs of slowing or stopping. I began to feel, as my master would say, a little perturbed. Now, my friends, this next sentence will seem to you the invention of a madman. But I assure you it is utter, unvarnished truth. We drove straight from the shore onto the clear lake of water, causing barely a ripple. I looked out the compartment window and saw the wheels pulled up, and zut alors! The train was hovering in the air, though through some unseen mechanism. I looked for the tracks, and could only just see them against the gleam of the lake. They were cunningly built upon pontoons which only just broke the surface of the water, though we did not touch them. What sort of train was the Trans-Siberian? From the windows I watched families working at their fields, dressed in colors as bright as harlequins, red and blue bodices, and bright bandanas which they pulled off to wave at the train. People are wonderful. They live somewhere bleak and then make themselves colorful instead. Can I converse? Oof. I'm not learning very much. She really sucks at her job right now. She's not giving me much information, and that is very disconcerting. I have to sell some stuff in Krymskia, more than likely to be able to afford passage to Pyongyang. There is little to report of the outside world, so a word today on Russian eating habits, more specifically, the Russian distaste for regular mealtimes. I met a fellow Frenchman today who said to me, the Russian mealtime is a guide to the Russian character. I begged him to explain further, and he obliged me. The guiding principle of the national cuisine is that all dishes must be capable of being served at any time the eater feels disposed. He sacrifices his finer susceptibilities to his love of freedom. I resolved to keep this thought in mind on future approaches to the dining car. If our locomotive suppers are not triumphs of culinary art, they are at least signal examples of logistical achievement. I'm keeping my relationship pretty well. Let's attend to Monsieur Fogg. I've made some foolish investments, and that's why we're as low as we are. We pulled into Krymskia in the evening. From Krymskia, it was possible to branch onto the Chinese Eastern Railway to Beijing, so we disembarked the platform. We hurried to find ourselves lodging, knowing that once the evening fell, it would be bitterly and miserably cold. Please don't let the market be closed. Market! Yes! Okay, now we can plan. No. That's not too bad. Hey. Let's go to Pyongyang because we got options from there. Okay. Let's explore. I took a few hours to explore, investigating the various options for how we might continue our journey. Pass the night here, and I will be able to make it to Krymskia. There was no moon at Krymskia, and not even a barking dog marred the silence of the luminous Siberian night. The only lit building bore the Copper Lily Artificers Guild. I knocked at the back door, eager to find company to help pass the long, cold night. A dwarf with long black hair, rouged lips, and thick brass goggles opened the door. I stared at her. I bowed and introduced myself as a foreigner to Krymskia, looking for conversation. Welcome. Come in and out of the cold. I am Nadisia Yemfmova. I have no idea how to pronounce it. You're somebody. That's all I know. We walked through a squalid corridor into a round room lit with bright electrical lamps. The artificers sprawled on low sofas and greeted me with beery enthusiasm. A human form automaton ushered me to a seat and handed me a drink with mechanical precision. I accepted my drink with a grin, and the small gears of in the automaton's face whirred to produce an answering smile. The hours passed quickly, in good company, and we shared many outlandish tales. I complimented their hospitality, and Nadiz clapped me on the arm. It has been a pleasure sharing our fire with you, Passepartout. She reached in a pocket and took out a copper medallion with the Artificer's Lily stamped upon it. Take this. Present it to any member of the Artificers Guild, and they will be bound to offer you help. Yay! I thanked them for their generosity and wended my way back through the dark streets of Krymskia, a city lit only by the brightness of the stars and the pale, ethereal glow of the northern lights. Pyongyang's got the option, so we're going there. 27 days. I don't think I'm hitting that record that I've seen so far, which is 27 days, but I'm actually in really good shape. I've still got just under 60 days, 53 days actually, to make this happen, and I think I can do it. We boarded a Chinese steam train at Krymskia Station. It was a smooth journey till we reached Zabaikalisk, where there was a change of gauge from the Russian to the Chinese rail. To relieve the tedium of waiting, I brought my master tea, saying a few. I attempted to better understand the mechanisms of the engineer's reason. I brought my master tea, in his usual fashion. In his usual fashion, well steeped with a dash of milk served just shy of boiling, he took a long sip and settled back into his green leather seat with the smallest of contented sighs. Yay! Only option is to wait. Special report from Minsk. The French are the worst for short memories. Okay, I thought for a second we were going straight to Beijing. I was like, oh dear. We restarted our journey a few hours later, only for it to be yet again interrupted by Chinese customs officials at Manzhouli. They were as brusque as the Russian officials. Clearly the bonds of bureaucracy overrode those of nation. They stamped our papers with their square ivory seals, leaving a distinctive red cinnabar mark. Phileas Fogg attempts round-world adventure. See, monsieur, you are in the paper. You're in the paper. And I've now made a really good investment because we've got the Western Star. We're heading to Pyongyang. That'll go for 7,300. And hopefully that will get us over to the U.S. where I can start selling stuff off there too and purchasing and selling stuff there to get us across and back to London in no time at all. Today we reached Mukden, famed for the Qing Imperial Palace. Alas, there was no time for exploration, for here our train divided, half going west to Pyongyang and the other half turning east to Beijing. Converse, see if I can learn some in Yokohama. On the subject of steamships, I've heard an uncle who Lima to Santiago, okay. Yokohama to Canton. No idea, but most sailors say that Canton has fallen from favor. Yokohama, Honolulu. Now you listen to me. You can pick up wax cylinders inscribed with music in Honolulu. You can sell for profit in Atlanta. Cool and all, but that's not particularly helpful. I spent this day attending Monsieur Fogg, who had managed to find a week-old English periodical which proposed a new fashion of tying one's cravat. I ventured that a gentleman must be a la mode. The traditional method was tried and true. Must be a la mode and of the latest style. Monsieur Fogg considered my opinion thoughtfully, though he kept casting subtle, pained glances toward my own assuredly fashionable apparel. Indeed, he said at length, I practiced the new cravat tying technique. We will not be tying cravats that way again. I practiced the new cravat tying technique before bed. A gentleman's gentleman can never be too prepared. We reached Pyongyang in the dark. I could see little of the platform, much less of the city. The soldiers guarding the station seemed nervous and unfed. Monsieur Fogg seemed not to notice the tension in the air. But I had a presentiment of unpleasantness. But then he was not a curious man. But then I had a presentiment of unpleasantness that would not leave me. My friends, I am not a superstitious man, but I felt a chill that night. We shared a carriage to our hotel with a group of talkative Protestant missionaries who blessed us at great and exhaustive length before we managed to escape to our beds. As I drifted to sleep, I wondered what Pyongyang would look like in the morning light. Would earn us very well here. Ow, my... Let's explore. I don't think he'll like it if I don't go out and find new routes. Pyongyang was a battleground between competing groups of Chinese and Japanese businessmen. The Koreans seemed to regard both sides with wariness, and European faces even more so. There were a surprising number of Americans on the streets, but then Americans, so it was said, were perennially drawn to opportunities for commerce. After all my concerns upon arrival, the city turned out to have a most restful and charming atmosphere, air thick with the smell of frying river mullet, schoolchildren swatting at each other with colorful umbrellas, women in chimajigori, I have no idea how to pronounce that, shopping and fluttering silk fans at their bows. Even my master summoned a remark upon its, as he put it, adequacy. We shall negotiate. Because if I leave tomorrow, that might make him feel more restless and really upset him. We took a room and settled in, and I spent a while talking to the hotelier to learn what I could, learning that you could pick up sugar canes in Acapulco, extremely valuable in Burlington. A most interesting snippet. Oh. Crap. With the last light of evening, I buffed and shone my master's pocket watch. I spent a few hours polishing shoes in the lobby. I engaged another guest in conversation to find out what I could, but obtained nothing but tips for doing laundry. We sailed for Yokohama. We took passage on a Korean vessel crewed by a mix of Koreans, Mongolians, and Siberians who regarded Monsieur Fogg with grave curiosity. I tried to dismiss their attentions, but it did little good. They continued to goggle at goggle at my master in mild disbelief until he retreated below deck with the slightest of furrows etching his brow. That's all I could do. Omsk independence hopes dashed. Well, that's no good. For the first day aboard, we kept ourselves mostly to ourselves. The crew seemed busy with their tasks, and I was happy to have fewer of those myself. In all honesty, I did not like the look of most of them. Monsieur Fogg was his usual impervious self, however, and made his calculations and read his newspaper. Meanwhile, the boat steamed onwards. Astrakhan to export mud as healing salve. Neato. One of the cabin girls, Elena, spoke good English and was attached to us as a translator, though she created as much conversation as she explicated. Do you know my parents? I doubt it, since I have only just met you. Are they famous? Elena nodded. My father was a Russian officer, maybe, I think, and Mama comes from a fabulous Cossack family. They're all soldiers. A Russian officer, maybe, I raised an eyebrow. Well, Mama met him when she was dressed as a man and joined the Cossack host. He was very surprised, I think. Elena shrugged. Mama says he died of shock, leaving me as a present. But I think he probably ran away because Mama is so fierce. She looked proud rather than distressed at this prospect. I blinked down at the little cabin girl, rather at a loss as to how I should respond. That's nice, I hazarded, and she nodded enthusiastically. Mama runs the boiler room. All the sailors are frightened of her, she told me rather wistfully. One day I will be like her. Elena made a mock fierce face, and I pretended to quake in terror until we both began laughing uproariously. I would like to meet her, I said, and Elena giggled with delight. I will ask, she replied. Why don't you like that? Elena knocked on my door unreasonably early in the morning. Eyes bright. Mamma says she wants to meet you. She seized my arm. Will you come? Lead the way, mademoiselle. We descended into the bowels of the ship. I felt the heat and noise of the engine before I saw it. The rumbling whistle of the boilers, the shouts of men shoveling coal, the thumping of the pistons, and the groan of metal. A woman with muscular arms sheened with sweat and hair shorn to her ears presided over the activity with well-worn confidence. She glanced over to us and grunted. I bowed deeply, as I would to any lady. Unimpressed, she spat at my feet, while Elena chattered away in an unintelligible dialect. The formidable woman regarded her daughter with a certain detachment, which masked deep adoration. The girl bloomed underneath her mamma's merest glance. We took our leave soon after, and Elena smiled at me radiantly. Isn't she wonderful? She breathed. I nodded enthusiastically, and Elena bestowed another bright smile upon me. Elena laughed as I hung over the ship's rail to get a better view of Yokohama as we neared the port. She gave me a hug goodbye, which surprised me, though her mother watched me with hard eyes throughout our exchange. We weighed anchor as the sun set. It lit the foreign flags in the harbor with the bright fire as it dipped below the horizon. That's why I got it. Explore, we can't plan anyway, so. It was hard to believe that Yokohama had only relatively recently opened to foreigners. There was an entire foreigners district not far from the waterfront, where it was as common to hear Chinese or Russian as Japanese. There were several varieties of English to choose from as well, though Monsieur Fogg would have barely deigned to include the nasal tongue of the American merchant. I noticed a Japanese man watching the scene with a look of intense concentration, scribbling in a sketchbook. What are you doing? He jumped and left a smear of ink on the paper. He looked up, clearly irritated. Do you mind? He said in an accent of an unholy mix of dusk words. Do you mind? He said in an accent of his accent an unholy mix of Dutch, French, and English. I am making a drawing for a woodcut. He was clearly a temperamental sort, so I left him to his work with a polite smile. I do not think he liked foreigners from his drawing of them. Ah, 18 days though. We should be fine. I think we got enough. As night fell, I engaged another guest in conversation to find out what could be gathered of little of use. Before going to bed, I'm gonna keep an eye on. There we go. That's better. Can I depart? Only to Manila. We made ourselves comfortable for the night, and I did some minor alterations to our clothing, so to ensure everything was in shipshape for our departure. No, hey, stop it. Stop it. It's going to be rough. No, 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 no. Okay, still nothing of value. It's going to be rough, but we have to get to San Francisco, because once I get over there, that puts us all that much closer back to London. What remained with the day, I spent a few hours walking around and found a cheerful Chinese youth who was searching for a dog, which I found near a dog kennel. The youth thanked me, and as we talked, I remarked that the fastest way to Acapulco is via Honolulu. I paid a pound for. I asked him how. I assured him we were unlikely to head that way, which my friend laughed. I can't understand travel, but now look at me. Take us 18 days. The Water Lily was a sleek iron-hulled ship to submarine prototype captained by a severe American by the name of Wicker, and crewed by a mix of Americans, Chinese, and Japanese, who all spoke a kind of salty, curse-studded sailor's English. In addition to the usual complement, the Water Lily carried an entire corps of brass-goggled engineers and a brace of submariners on standby should the captain call the order to submerge. The rumor was that she was a Confederate vessel sold off to a private concern in the later, more desperate stages of the Civil War, but I saw no trace of a dark past aboard. The crew seemed a happy family and welcomed us into their iron-hulled bosom. San Francisco beleaguered by gold prices. Our cabin, while hardly spacious, was adequate to our needs. One of the midshipmen came by to show us how to use the pressure seals in case of submersion, but in all other aspects, looked forward to a peaceful steamship ocean crossing. I was not to be so lucky. The salty air blew cool and sharp against my face as I opened the door onto the top deck. It was painfully early, and the only passengers awake were a group of Chinese laborers hunched miserably near the stern. One of their number was vomiting copiously into a bucket. I offered him as much space as I could give him, and was careful not to get anything noxious on my shoes. Ooh. I accompanied Monsieur Fogg to a game of whist with a family of American missionaries who were traveling back to San Francisco for a family wedding. My master began strongly, but Mademoiselle Loretta, the eldest girl, had a sharp eye and won several hands in a row. A new round was dealt, and I noticed Mademoiselle Loretta smile triumphantly at my master and play another winning hand. The minister's daughter accepted Monsieur Fogg's congratulations demurely, though I saw a flash of something altogether unsporting in her eyes as she lowered her lashes. I added my congratulations, though I felt something was amiss with the seemingly pious Mademoiselle Loretta. Perhaps she had some cards hidden up her sleeve? Maybe. I hope I'm doing this right. I spent today in the company of the Water Lily submariners. They were all hardy men and women who preferred the dim, enclosed spaces of the hold to the top deck. Too much sky, one of them said, squinting suspiciously. Her crewmate nodded. All that fresh air. They shuddered collectively and suggested a bracing race to the boiler room. I tried to keep up, but could not quite adjust to the lack of light, and continually tripped over my own feet. The commander, a short Japanese-American woman, pronounced me an utter disgrace. I decided to salvage my reputation amongst the submariners, and so lifted my head proudly and suggested a test of acrobatic skill. Though the submariners were all fit as horses, they had never attempted to, for instance, form a pyramid or walk the length of a corridor on their hands. They competed with me gamely, but admitted themselves outclassed. Commander Davis even applauded. It's Izumi, to my friends. Gosh, she said, clapping me heavily on the shoulder as I took my leave. You're not so bad. Chicago can be reached from Winnipeg to Duluth Railroad. Hey, stop it. That's Acapulco right there. Ah, my valeting is lacking. I was climbing the rigging entirely innocently, and not at all for the purposes of spying on the crew to appease my own rapacious curiosity, when I heard two of the crewmen arguing in a pidgin mix of English and Japanese. I closed my eyes and listened to their voices. Only a few words were audible over the howling of the wind. Shrine, heathen, worship. Before a sudden scream rent the air, one of the sailors was falling from the platform's edge. I closed my eyes as he fell, but the sound of his body hitting the deck was much worse than any bloody sight. I looked up and managed to catch sight of the fallen sailor's companion, his face still and pallid. Was that guilt in his eyes or merely shock? He slipped away before the captain arrived, and I followed him. He retired to the crew quarters, and I began to hear the sound of desperate muttered prayers. The Water Lily's crew held a funeral for the dead sailor. I was not specifically invited, but felt a sense of responsibility, having witnessed the man's fatal plunge. Captain Wicker led the Christian service with customary grimness. I was surprised by the absence of the sailor's companion, who had been arguing with him just before the fall. Yet he was not the only one missing from the funeral. Oddly, only half the crew had come to pay their respects. I asked my neighbor about this breach of custom, and she narrowed her eyes. Joseph was a convert, she told me defiantly. The captain taught him to read the Bible himself. The rest of the crew are heathens. They stay away from our godly ceremonies. Storm, too exhausted to write proper entries. Suffice to say, we are still afloat. As we settled down for the night, Monsieur Fogg remarked, "We have gained ourselves a day, Passepartout. We have crossed the date line." My master was, of course, correct. We had reached the point directly opposite Greenwich. Imagine what might have transpired had we forgotten. Imagine what might have happened had we forgotten. A less precise man than Monsieur Fogg might have finished on the 80th day, and yet believed himself to have lost. See if I can learn some stuff here. Greetings, Reverend. Passport, good day to you. You've mentioned trains. I've been told Atlanta's linked to New York aboard the Piedmont airline. Cool, okay. Burlington to Atlanta. What a question. Still merchants in Havana will pay very well for cotton flowers from Atlanta. What about Omaha? You guys are of no help to me at all. Good God. Yesterday's storm hit us with little warning. One moment I was preparing Monsieur Fogg's shaving water to exactly the right temperature. The next we were being tossed from one end of the cabin to the other. We were only lucky that the bed was securely nailed to the floor. Rain clattered against our iron hull, nearly drowning out the shouts of the crew. The storm lasted nearly 6 hours and blew us far off course. The captain spent most of the day peering at his charts trying to locate our positions. There was no land anywhere upon the horizon. Well, where are we going now? Oh, we're going down to Honolulu. Okay, so we were going to San Francisco, but now we're going to Honolulu, which is 1,500 miles away. The captain announced a change of destination. The Water Lily would now make for nearby Hawaii rather than San Francisco. We would make port in Honolulu in 5 days and have to find our own further conveyance from there. Honolulu sounded wonderful to me. Pressed ever so slightly, a rare outward sign of an entirely understandable annoyance. This, my master said, will not do. Indeed not, sir, I agreed, not even daring to calculate the delay and expense our unexpected diversion would cause. Monsieur Fogg gave me a cool, appraising glance. Captain Wicker has reneged upon his word as a gentleman, he said curtly before lowering his voice to an almost furtive tone. Our course is clear. We must mutiny. Gosh, I opened my mouth to argue the point, but he continued on without so much as a pause. See to it, Passepartout. Use your natural charm, I interjected. Okay. I accidentally clicked something, didn't even realize it. Okay. Quite, he said, with the agreeableness of a gentleman who has just given his valet a near Herculean task. We will mutiny in 5 days when we reach Honolulu. Make your preparations as you see fit. Honolulu. I've heard that there are as many Americans as Hawaiians there. Acapulco. I believe so. My childhood sweetheart had a wonderful time aboard the airship Reina Christiana from Honolulu to Acapulco. Tell me more about Acapulco. I wouldn't be surprised if you can pick up hunting rifles in Acapulco, extremely valuable in Washington. How does... Okay, whatever. Oh, it's probably the airship route. My task was clear. I was to foment mutiny aboard the Water Lily. I decided to begin exploiting the crew's animosity towards one another. Divide and conquer, or so dear Maman always consoled. I considered inflaming their religious passions. Gossip and rumor would be a good way to start. I considered inflaming their religious passions, though such passions were, by their nature, unpredictable. So I decided to steal the captain's well-mounted Christmas. Heard rumors about the Shinto crew. Gossip about the captain planning to forcibly convert all the Shinto crew when we reached port. Some of the younger members seemed alarmed, but others merely laughed off the possibility. I was with satisfaction that I noted a certain increase in tension aboard the Water Lily, a situation I would carefully have to exacerbate if my master's mutiny was to have any chance of success. Next, I attempted to ingratiate myself with Commander Davis and the submariners, who were rather storm-tossed and disgruntled. There are no storms underwater, the commander muttered, her hair in a tangle underneath her cap. We should have submerged, I agreed. Captain Wicker risked all our lives. I think perhaps he does not trust your abilities as submariners. The commander's face darkened at my assertion. Perhaps you are right at that, she said. Perhaps so. I've heard him say as much, I added, hoping to press my advantage. The commander's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Is that so? Why would he say such things? I shrugged and hurried away, hoping I had not blown my opportunity to win their favor. I had attempted to suborn the obvious targets aboard the Water Lily, but wars were often won by the unexpected. With that in mind, I turned my attention upon the ship's artificer, a tall, rather imposing woman in a short jacket embroidered with the guild's copper lily. Artificers were notoriously neutral in the matter of conflict or civil disruption, but I showed her my artificer's medallion. She sighed heavily and told me to call her Shanaz. It seems that I must honor my guild's debt, she said, with evident reluctance. You may call upon me. I spent the day putting the last finishing touches to my planned mutiny. It was a matter as delicate and serious as the creation of a souffle by a master chef. I spread word of my signal amongst my allies. and retired to bed early. One could not mutiny on a bad night's sleep, after all. Fogg said to have crossed the dateline, but will extra day be enough? We reached Honolulu in the dark. The captain took a small skiff into the harbor with a few of his officers wishing to inquire about repairs before putting the water lily into dry dock. Monsieur Fogg watched the boat for a long time. Now is the time, he said crisply. I trust everything in orders? I assured him it was. He nodded, having expected no other response. Let us hope so. With that, my master retreated to his cabin, and I called the signal to arms. The water lily erupted into chaos. Everywhere was the clash of sabers and pistols. Now and then I heard the shriek of the officers' sonic weapons. But I was not alone. The half of the crew that followed the Shinto creed fell in behind me, lit with the desire to teach their Christian crewmates a lesson rather than mutiny. But their anger helped stoke the fires of rebellion. The Chinese laborers poked their heads out of their cabin at the noise and confusion, but seemed to decide upon a policy of detached observation. I was only grateful they did not intervene against my band of mutineers. The submariners, led by Commander Davis, emerged quietly. There was a long, terrible moment when I wondered at their allegiance. Then Commander Davis caught my eye and nodded. We know when it is time for change, she shouted, driving back any stragglers loyal to Captain Wicker. Suddenly, a horde of rat-sized clockwork automata boiled up from the engine room, tripping up the officers and crew loyal to the captain and emitting gouts of scalding steam at any who dared attack them. The Water Lily's artificer then was on our side. By noon it was clear that all our efforts were for naught, however. The mutiny did not have the support in numbers required to defeat those who had maintained their loyalty. Captain Wicker and the other officers returned just in time to smother the last flames of rebellion. My master and I were trussed up and set off at the port of Honolulu. It was only due to Captain Wicker's good grace that we retained our luggage. Our mutinous comrades were not treated with such leniency, and were thrown unceremoniously below. That was, Monsieur Fogg said with icy precision as we stood upon the strand of the volcanic island on which we found ourselves, rather badly done. Unfortunately, I could not disagree. I should plan. Okay, that's mech. I was like, wait, okay. Probably Acapulco to New Orleans to New York and then across to London. Okay, hotel, pass the night. It was as though Honolulu lived in one indrawn breath. A wheeling swath of sky, white-laced waves, and pristine sand bounded by black volcanic bluffs. The town was entirely hidden behind groves of coconut and eucalyptus. We took a short tour. You look, said our coach driver in Hila, like city folk. I was born in Paris, I nodded. My first breath was of her smoke and perfume. So you are, like the great and sleepless city of Paris, always in a rush. He murmured something to his horse, which looked well-fed and high-spirited. As a young man, I went to San Francisco to make my fortune. I, too, ran and scrabbled in pursuit of the almighty dollar. We are not pursuing wealth, monsieur, I corrected, though, indeed, Monsieur Fogg's fortune hung nearly in the balance of his wager. Was our entire adventure merely a glorified pursuit of coin? Our adventure thus far had been somewhat harum-scarum. Barely had we placed our toes on dry land. It was growing tiresome, and here we were with still an ocean and a half to cross. Do you not wish the freedom to exhale, Passepartout? The coach driver asked. To stop running and simply feel the wind upon your face, and the sun warming you and the sound of the ocean like a heartbeat? I will take my moments where I may, Ila, I agreed. With my master, that is, where I find peace. Or, if not peace, then surely it is purpose, and that is much the same. The coach driver sighed and turned his face up to the endless sky. A man may find himself here, but he told me, but only if he wishes it. He invited us to his home that evening, and fed us like dough and poi, dough-like poi, and bright flesh slices of orange and guava, and I thought for once about peace and purpose. But I still thought of the marks in Monsieur Fogg's ledger, and the distances we had yet to travel. I knew no peace in Honolulu, but my purpose burned bright and drew me forward. We finished our night in Honolulu with a souvenir, a swirling conch shell collected from the beach, and as we walked back to our lodgings. I'll wait for the market because I think we can sell something. I'll go ahead and sell that because we're not going to need it. Okay. Flying on the Reina Cristiana. We boarded the Reina Cristiana, a Spanish Torres Quevedo type airship. Its gondola shaped to resemble one of the infamous Spanish galleons of previous centuries, except in miniature, and is richly outfitted with Philippine hardwood furniture, Fijian silk curtains, and lacquered ornamental automata imported from China. My cabin resembled a fashionable salon more than an airship berth. Greetings, first mate. Passepartout, the journey treats you well? Acapulco. What can you tell me of? Nothing to say. Acapulco to Havana. Did you realize that you can buy Cuban cigars in Havana? So, in Ponta Delgada? Okay. Nothing new discovered. Okay. The captain of the Torres Quevedo type airships swapped the Spanish flag for flying from the prow to Hawaiian colors. The Mexicans are not fond of us Spaniards since the revolution, he explained. Spanish ships are turned away from the port. Surely they are not fooled. It was a thin subterfuge, even if it deserved the term. He shrugged. It is a little game we play in the interest of trade. We send our Filipino crew members to negotiate for us, and the Mexican customs house adds a hefty surcharge to our taxes. The captain clapped me on the shoulder. Do not worry, my friend. This is not my first run. Yikes. We smelled the smoke and the gunpowder sweetened by blood. Acapulco was just visible in the distance, wreathed in lightning-flashed smoke. It was impossible to see what was happening. I was thankful for the onshore wind that meant we could not hear the fighting. I was certain there was nothing to hear but sobbing and screams. Is it pirates? I asked, unsure whether that would be the best explanation. Pirates, at least, would be swiftly dealt with by the Mexican authorities. I don't know, he retorted before he gripped the brass-handled telescope swinging from his belt. He turned to the crew. I need a volunteer to climb the rigging and see what is up ahead. I will do it, I volunteered rashly. Even Monsieur Fogg appeared to pale by a shade at the idea. The crew stared at me with a mixture of pity and awe as Captain wordlessly handed me his telescope, a pair of aviator's goggles, and a red handkerchief. Wave the handkerchief when you are secure, and we will raise the ship to give you a better view. I shook Monsieur Fogg's hand before I climbed up the hatch and grabbed onto the ratlines. The wind buffeted my face, and the roar of the twin Antoinette engines seemed amplified. Behind the comforting curve of the envelope, I saw an endless, dizzying stretch of sky and the Pacific Ocean glittering far, far below. I closed my eyes and heaved myself up, managing to grip the foot rope with my toes as I swung out and away from the gondola. I was braced against the wheeling sky and an impossible drop by nothing other than my trembling hands and feet clutching the rope. I reached up blindly with my right hand, and the worn rope snapped, taking with it both of my handholds. I swung out precariously, clutching one fluttering end of the rope as my other hand scrabbled in the air and my foothold loosened. I grabbed the end of the rope with both hands and let the weight of my body pull me away from the envelope. My toes slipped for a moment. I hung entirely untethered in the air, a suspended endless moment of sky-bright insanity, and then I reached one hand up and then the other, and climbed the writhing rope until my palms bled, until I was near enough to throw myself against the ship's envelope, and finally took a deep, shuddering breath. I was safe. I made it to the widest cross-section of the envelope and waved my red handkerchief. I felt the hum of the engines grow sharper as the airship began to climb. Each shudder and yaw was more pronounced, and I clung to my perch for dear life, biting my lips as the wind did its best to pluck me from the safety and fling me into the sucking embrace of the ocean below. It would not have me. I refused to meet my death beneath this unfamiliar sky. I extended the telescope as the ship bobbed in the air and peered through at the sky above Acapulco. The sky above Acapulco, thick with airships engaged in battle with each other, firing cannon and exploding and dodging fire from the ships below. I saw their flags and shuddered. I will not recount how I climbed back down, how many times I slipped, how my palms bled and itched, how I nearly pitched into the ocean. I will tell you I made it back inside and made my report to the captain and crew. The French army is besieging Acapulco, I said then. I fainted dead away. The captain called the passengers and crew together for an announcement. We will leave the French to their business in Acapulco and head to Panama. We must continue to Acapulco, I insisted, not wanting to deviate from our chosen course. Will you let such a small matter as a siege divert you, Captain? He gave me a fulsome glare. How will we pass the blockade, then, monsieur? I told them my half-formulated notion, that though I was nervous to speak. I will stitch a French flag, I announced. We will pass by the besiegers without remark and must merely avoid the Mexican troops. The captain agreed to my notion grudgingly, and after an hour's work with some borrowed dresses, we hoisted our new flag in place of the Hawaiian colors. Not particularly honorable, but effective enough. We tethered at Acapulco no worse for wear. I hoped we would survive the besieged city in similar style. Hang on. The French had tenuous hold of the Mexican port of Acapulco. The bay was crowded with ships firing upon each other, and airships rained fire and misery down upon the slope-roofed buildings. French soldiers fought Mexicans in the smoke-wreathed streets. We decided to explore the city, the better to find a way to leave. We headed away from the fighting to the outskirts of the city, a risky venture considering our white skin would mark us as foreigners in a besieged city. Still, I had little desire to set myself between two armies, and I hoped we could avoid the clash of soldiers altogether. We had not gone far before we were scooped up by a Mexican patrol of irregulars, led by the smiling Madame Gonzalez Peña. You don't look like French army, she remarked in Spanish, with a look of surprise. We are travelers, merely caught up in the unpleasantness. The craven siege of a Mexican city by French aggressors is what you mean by unpleasantness? She raised an eyebrow, hefting her rifle with a practiced grip. I nodded in agreement. It seemed the politic thing to do. Madame Gonzalez Peña was, it turned out, a certified doctor when there was a siege unfolding, directed us to a makeshift hospital set up in one of her friend's villas. How can we leave the city? I demanded. There are automatic carriages, even airships heading north, she replied. You should avail yourselves of them. Leave this place before our reinforcements arrive, for they will not welcome you. Feeling rather as if she had understated the matter, I was resolved to take her advice and leave Acapulco as soon as we could find the means. It's going to be the best way to go. We stayed the night in a villa run by a local woman whose instinct for business had survived even the conflict raging on the streets. It was comfortable enough, though the sounds of explosions made me lie awake at night. I'll wait for the market to open. I might have to sell something. We're not heading to Port-au-Prince, so I'll sell that telescope because this is worth $2,100 in Dallas, and since I'm planning on heading to San Francisco or San Pedro, and that can get us across to Dallas, we are in good shape. The captain of the Bontaventura swung down from the long rope ladder onto the muddy ground, nimble despite the long trained skirt that ruffled out from under her fitted jacket. She extended a hand to me, and I shook it, thinking her to be a modern sort of woman. Alas, her lip curled in distaste. I am Captain Isabella Acisara, she said in Spanish. You are a Spaniard? Ha! When I was a girl, the Mexican flag flew over California. Only for 20 years has it been American. So you are a Mexican, then? Captain Acisara clutched her rosary beads so hard I feared she would snap the thread. I am no Mexican. I am Mutsun, and my people have lived in what you call California for thousands of years. We lifted from the ground with a jolt and left behind the battleground of Acapulco. The captain put a coal-stained deerskin apron over her finery and buckled her flowing train out of the way as the boilers rumbled to life. I kept out of her way and went below with the other passengers and was immediately knocked over by a dark-haired woman holding a notebook in front of her face. She blinked down at me. I dusted myself off with a shrug. Hospital, at your service, madame. Didn't see you there, she replied cheerfully. I'm Mrs. Hunt. What is your opinion of the plight of the indigenous peoples of America? I do not know much of it, I admitted. I am writing a book on the subject, she said, handing me her notebook. Did you know that last year's Indian Appropriation Act made all Native Americans wards of the state? I did not. Well then, you must read my book, once I've written it, that is. Madame Hunt snatched her notebook back. I'll be sending a copy to the president when it's published. I will look forward to reading it, she snorted. I'd be satisfied if he's the only one that does. Don't need to really converse too much more. We've got routes across the U.S. mapped out. Madame Hunt and Captain Acisara had an animated conversation over lunch. Apparently, the captain was transporting Madame all over the Americas so she could interview various peoples for a book. Who did you interview in Acapulco? Many of the Franciscan friars who tended the Indian missions returned to Mexico after the invasion, Madame Hunt explained. The captain added, including Friar Bernardo, who knew me as a child. Were you not afraid of the battle? Madame Hunt shook her head. There is a greater war going on in America right now, against the Native Americans. It is only a little quieter. The lookout gave a shout and a whistle. We rushed to the upper deck and saw the harbor of San Pedro gleaming before us. I kissed Captain Acisara's hand with studied courtesy before we disembarked. I kind of want to plan a little bit, see what we can get. Okay, we're going to need to hit the bank. Monsieur Fogg's snapshot is later. Let's see if this bank can offer us a good return for our time. I regarded the manager of the bank as we entered, a small, sweaty man who greeted us with a warm professionalism. You want to make withdrawal? You may have to wait a day or two. We require 500 pounds, I said. The manager nodded. I will have to communicate with London first, of course. He apologized. I should have a reply tomorrow. It seems Monsieur Fogg remarked as we left. We have some time to dispose of. 500 should get us through to Dallas. We were waiting near the wharf, looking out over the rolling Pacific Ocean in the new town area of San Pedro. I decided to walk the old town, but found it largely a wasted trip through the streets. Though the streets were laid out in a well-ordered grid, the plots themselves were mostly empty, either half built or half taken down. Presumably, this place was dying in the wake of the Indian gold rush, coming alive with the building of the railway, and in a state of some transition, about which the residents appeared as confused as I. Alonzo Horton will bring us tonight. Will bring us, right? One man told me firmly. It's all about the location, you see. We tried building the city here, didn't work. So he's rebuilding it all over there. He pointed back in the direction of the water. He's already fixed up San Diego the same way. And what is better about over there exactly? The man shrugged. It's hard to see, but when someone has the conviction that Horton has, they must be right. Foolish word, surely, I thought. But then I remembered the circumstances under which I was on this particular adventure around the world, and felt necessarily silent. I returned to my master, empty-handed from my tour of the lower districts. Sometimes there is a great lightness in being a tourist, forever leaving behind the great problems of one location and another. As night fell, I attended to Monsieur Fogg. We returned to the bank at opening time to collect our funds, and then we were ready to proceed once more. See if I can. We went down to the wharf to find a route onwards, but it took us a few attempts to find a sailor who looked trustworthy enough. We settled into a fishing boat whose name was Salvador, piloted by a Hispanic lady. I named it after my husband, she told, as she slipped the painter. And we pushed out onto the water. And where is your husband now? I inquired. She jerked one thumb downwards. Disappeared beneath the waves, friend. I gulped, but we were too far from the shore to turn back already. Oh, man. Burlington, Dallas. Nothing particularly useful. Nothing I really didn't know. The boat scudded through the water, roughly following the sandy coastline and rocky cliffs off of the shore. Do you make this journey often, madame? I asked, looking for some reassurance that we would arrive intact. No, she answered. Mostly I fish in the San Pedro Bay, but I don't mind the change. I looked out across the water at the coast, passing by once more, struck by its vast size. Yet every inch was being struggled over all the same. The second day, Captain Delora stayed at the tiller through lashing rain. that kept my master huddled below the rough tarpaulin cover stretched over the well of the boat, and myself with him, mopping the rainwater from his brow. I was mostly engaged in saying Hail Marys, which was the only good I felt I could do. My master gave no prayers of his own, at least none that were outwardly shown. The storm lasted well into the evening, and we lost several hours, but finally the wharf of San Francisco came into view. "We land," called Dolores. "Take the tiller." There was no moment to lose. I raced to the back of the boat, and just as the captain had already dived overboard, painter in her hand, I grabbed to haul her back and began to tug, only for her to surface a moment later, swimming madly. I went for the tiller, looping the rope over it, and watched as the captain pulled herself ashore. There she looped the rope through an anchor ring and hauled us in. We docked and secured ourselves with 3 more lines. "Madame, that was quite a dangerous move," I cried. "Could you not have sailed her in?" "Not with a wind like that at our back," she snapped. "We would have been smashed onto the rocks. Salvador has already had 1 hole put in him. I do not know if he can take another. And anyway, we lived." And then her tension came out in a laugh like a rolling barrel. I could not help but join with her. Do I have anything of value here? Okay. I'm gonna have to sell that. You. Man, I've got nothing. Okay. I'm just making choices at this point. We're almost done. And it's already been 2.5 hours as well, so I'm probably just gonna call it a day right here. With that being said, I'm 60 days in. I might just try to finish this next week. So challenge not completed. Challenge failed. Yay! Anyway, 60 days in. All right, and just over halfway, I think. I'm already in the U.S. I just got to find a good way forward and everything. And the funds have just gone off the cliff since I left Asia. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'm really actually enjoying this game. It's a really fun game, and it's like one of those choose your own adventure games. So if you like that kind of genre, definitely look into this game. It is really fun and really well done. And thank you all so much for watching, and I will see all of you next time.